I'm going to call this meeting to order. We have a vice chair election to do first, and then we'll suspend and then wait for the minister to arrive. Well, we might as well get. Anyway, let's carry on. So I call this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 118 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Public Safety and National Security. Before we begin, I would ask all in-person participants to read the guidelines written on the updated cards on the table. These measures are in place to help prevent audio and feedback incidents and to protect the health and safety of all participants, including the interpreters. You will also notice a QR code on the card which links to a short awareness video. I don't see such cards, but I think it's, there you go. Here you go. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format. I would like to remind participants of the following points. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. All comments should be addressed through the chair. Members, please raise your hand if you wish to speak, whether participating in person or by Zoom. The clerk and I will manage the speaking order as best we can. So I inform you that the position of first vice chair is vacant. MP Doug Shipley announced his resignation to me on Tuesday, September 16th. Thank you, Doug, for your service. I now give the floor to the clerk so he can proceed with the election. Mr. Clerk, if you please.
Good afternoon, bon après-midi. Conformément à l'article 106.2, le
Pursuant to Standing Order 106.2, the vice chair
must be a member of the official opposition. A member, I'm now prepared to receive motions for the first vice chair. Je suis maintenant prêt à recevoir des motions pour le premier vice-président, Mr. Shipley.
There we go. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for the past year as being vice chair. I enjoyed it very much, and I would like to nominate MP and welcome back my colleague, Ms. Dancho, to the position.
Are there any further motions? So, the motion on the floor that Rocco Dancho be elected as first vice chair of the committee.
Do we vote on that?
We vote on this, yeah.
Okay. All in favor? All opposed? Seems to be unanimous. Welcome back. It's good to have you back. Okay. So we shall resume here the business of today, which is pursuant to Standing Order 108 sub 2 and the motion adopted on August 13, the committee is meeting to study the review of the Foyle Terrace plot in Toronto and of the security screening process for permanent residence and citizenship applications. I want to remind members that there is currently a Section 517 publication ban in place. A Section 517 publication ban prohibits the publication of any information, evidence, or representations made at or in anticipation of a bail hearing. Any bail conditions, reasons of the bail court, and any evidence or materials relied upon at the bail hearing are prohibited from disclosure. I would like to welcome the witnesses for the first hour. The Honourable Mark Miller, PC MP, Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship. Welcome. From the Department of Citizenship and Immigration, we have with us Harpreet S. Koklar, Deputy Minister. Pemi Gill, Assistant Deputy Minister. Soyoung Park, Assistant Deputy Minister, Asylum and Refugee Resettlement. And Aisha Zafar, Assistant Deputy Minister, Migration Integrity. I now invite Minister Miller to make an opening statement. Please go ahead, sir. Where do we do the sound?
Thank you, Chair. Hi, everyone. Members, I want to first congratulate MP Dancho on first vice chair unanimous nomination by this committee. Probably one of the few times the committee votes unanimously on something, and obviously welcome back to the House of Commons. Nice to see you. Nice to see all of you, for that matter. I, in turn, want to echo the words of the Public Safety Minister in commending the work of our security and law enforcement partners in apprehending the individuals in question. They've proven yet again that continued collaboration across law enforcement, security, and border agencies is essential to keep people safe. At the same time, I intimately share your serious concerns about the arrest of the two individuals charged in the terrorism attempt in Toronto, Ahmed El-Didi and Mustafa El-Didi. I'm also concerned about the arrest of a few weeks ago of Mohammed Khan, a Pakistani national suspected of plotting an attack in New York. I will provide as much information as possible, and echoing the instructions of the chair and the ongoing court case, we must remember not to impair the Crown's ability to prosecute the individuals, the accused, and the accused right to a fair trial. Le 28 août, nous avons fourni à ce comité une chronologie des événements. J'ai également demandé.
On the 28th August, we provided this committee with a chronology of events. I've also asked my deputy minister to conduct a thorough review of how these two individuals entered Canada, and we are reviewing our internal security screening procedures. The first step will be to gather all the facts. Once those elements are put together, Minister Leblanc and I will move quickly to make the necessary changes to strengthen the system. We will complete the assessments and publicize the recommendations. Before highlighting my department's role in strengthening Canada's security screening procedures, I would like to give you a brief overview of how my department works with other agencies to protect our country.
Answers and transparency. It's precisely what all of us aim to provide today. That's why my department provided a chronology of events to this committee regarding Mohammed Khan, in addition to the chronology of events provided in August. I do want to be clear, everyone who wants to come to Canada is screened. IRCC works closely with CBSA, CSIS, and the RCMP to share information and identify people who may pose a national security risk. This monitoring occurs in 3 stages: before the person arrives to Canada, at the port of entry, and once in Canada. You heard that from my colleague a few weeks ago. My department leads on the first stage in collaboration with CBSA and CSIS. Every applicant for a temporary or permanent residence is subject to an initial security assessment. We assess their personal information and history against a set of risk indicators to determine if they could pose a potential threat. Based on those risk indicators, we identify applicants that warrant further security screening by CBSA or CSIS. We also confirm their identity and assess admissibility, verifying biometric data such as fingerprints and biographic information against the RCMP databases, as well as immigration data held by international partners, and that includes our most important partner, the United States. Les agents d'immigration évaluent systématiquement les demandes.
Immigration officers systematically assess applications against the criteria of the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act. They may deem a person inadmissible because of criminal activity, human rights violations, national security concerns, or misrepresentation. Members of a terrorist organization are inadmissible. CBSA officers carry out another level of control when entering Canada. People who provide false information or use fraudulent documents or are flagged in our system may be denied entry. All adult refugee claimants in Canada are subject to a thorough security check by the CBSA and CSIS. Once the people are admitted to Canada, security and law enforcement partners work together to manage threats within our borders.
Violate the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act, they risk losing their status and facing removal and criminal charges. As Minister, I have the authority to revoke someone's Canadian citizenship if they've obtained it by being dishonest, committing fraud, or hiding important information. With regards to Ahmed El-Didi, his initial temporary resident visa application was refused, not for security reasons, as no risk indicators were identified during the initial assessment. Rather, he was deemed a potential non-genuine visitor over concerns he wouldn't leave Canada at the end of his authorized stay. When he applied again, his application was approved after the officer was satisfied he intended to visit Canada. Risk indicators that were flagged along his immigration journey, from his asylum claim to his applications for permanent residency and citizenship, were referred to security partners. A favorable recommendation, as you heard a few weeks ago, was returned each time. No issues were found by the officers that made him inadmissible. Je prends cette situation très au sérieux.
I take this situation very seriously. I fully support the review by my department and today's discussions. We are committed to taking all necessary measures to ensure everyone's safety. The security of Canadians is a top priority for this government and for all members of Canadians. Together, we will continue to prevent, detect, and disrupt any suspected terrorist activity. And we are committed to continually reviewing and improving our security apparatus.
Happy to take your questions.
We'll start our questions with Ms. Dancho. Ms. Dancho, please go ahead, 6 minutes.
Chair, can you hear me okay? Just making sure this works. Thank you, Minister, for being here, and thank you for your opening kind words. I appreciate that. As we know, we have a very serious situation on our hands, Minister. That's the reason that you are here. Your government has allowed 3 alleged terrorists into our country through the immigration streams that came ultimately from what we've learned from the RCMP through Globe and Mail reporting, came within hours of murdering an untold number of innocent people, Canadians and Americans, in the latest alleged terrorists that's been gained entry into Canada under immigration streams under your watch, sir. And unfortunately, though it's been several weeks since the first 2 and a few days since, or a few weeks since the second iteration, we've yet to find out how this has happened. And to my knowledge, you've made no commitment of how you're going to fix it and prevent it from happening again. What we do know and understand is that your government in the past has directed public servants to fast-track immigration procedures, to cut some corners, bring in people as quickly as possible. And now we have a situation where we have 3 alleged terrorists on our hands, so it is reasonable to believe there could be more. So what specific steps have you taken the past few weeks to ensure no more alleged terrorists can gain entry to Canada through our immigration streams?
Thank you for the question, MP Dancho. As you know, there are a number of elements about this case that I cannot discuss publicly. I would also not assume a number of facts that are not in evidence currently, but again, we take these incidents very, very seriously. I announced in the French portion of my speech that we should come up with a result of our internal investigation within the next 2 weeks. Again, those will be made public. I think the discussion here is to see if and when there was any deficiency, if there was one, whether it is one that is systematic, and then how you then remedy that. What we will disclose to you in the next 2 weeks, obviously we can't disclose today, the investigation is not
So
complete,
just to
but we
confirm,
prepared
though, you
to
haven't
propose it in
taken
the
any
next 2 weeks.
measures to change any procedures whatsoever?
Again,
Nothing has changed?
As I've said to you, we're currently investigating if and when there were any deficiencies and
Thank
what
you, I
measures
appreciate
need to be
that.
taken.
With my knowledge of immigration, the procedures are already known. In fact, your department has provided a list of how the procedures are undertaken. So to me, it's very clear, if you can follow the trail over the last number of years, you should be able to determine how it is, for example, that the fact that we weren't able to determine there was a 2015 ISIS video where one of the alleged terrorists was dismembering a prisoner back in 2015 that was circulating the internet, and yet 3 years later he gained entry into Canada, and in fact went through 6 different immigration streams since that time and ultimately gained Canadian citizenship. And in that time, there were 4 red flags flagged for that individual. 3 of them were risk indicators. Obviously, none of them were taken seriously, or not to the extent that he was not allowed to continue down the immigration streams. What I did find interesting, though, Minister, is that in 2018, your government removed the requirement for police background checks, or officially called police clearance certificates, from the country of origin, from countries like Pakistan, and Pakistan ultimately is a bit of a high-risk country, to say the least, so it is puzzling that that was done in 2018. This security check was removed, and now we know a student visa from Pakistan gained entry into Canada. Have you reinstated this security requirement, for example? That is an easy step that you could have taken by now.
Again, currently, you know that this individual was an asylum seeker. You know, again, that there are differences with respect to different requirements for and the reliability of police certificates at different stages. They vary in
Excuse
their
me, sorry,
quality.
I may have
and they
misspoke,
play
but I'm
into
talking
our
about
risk
the
assessment.
student visa from Pakistan, the latest alleged terrorist, not the son, but the student visa
Sorry,
from Pakistan.
again, and this may be within or not within the scope of this discussion, Mr. Chair. Again, the person, the latest alleged individual, came in as a student from Pakistan.
Correct.
Again, the details that you have in your chronologies are the ones that I'm at liberty to speak to at this time.
Thank you, Minister. But I'm asking specifically about how in 2018 your government removed the requirement for police clearance certificates, ultimately police background checks from the country of origin, from countries like Pakistan. Now we have a student visa holder from Pakistan who did not receive the police assuming he did not receive the police clearance certificate, unless you can correct me, but that requirement was removed in 2018. So there was a security check removed. That requirement was removed in 2018 from Pakistan for student visa holders. Now we have a situation where your government's brought in a student visa holder from Pakistan who's alleged to be a terrorist. He was on his way to Brooklyn, New York, to massacre Jews. And there was a situation where there could have been an additional level of screening that your government removed in 2018. So have you reinstated the security requirement? I'm hearing that you have not done that. I do feel that that's something quite easy that you could do that could provide another layer of security, so this doesn't happen again.
Again, we rely
Is that
on
not
our,
reasonable?
we rely on our security partners to advise us as to the risk profile to take with respect to these
It's just a common sense
individuals.
approach, though, is it not?
Again, you're assuming the reliability and the validity of police certificates. When
I appreciate
our
that, but for permanent
screening process
residents
is a
from,
lot more
from permanent
comprehensive.
Point of
residents
order.
from Pakistan,
Again,
Thank you, Chair. The practice here is that a question is asked and there's sufficient time for the minister to answer. I would ask that that rule be in place so that we can actually hear the answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. O'Connell. Let's let the minister answer the
I'll-
question.
we are confident in the progressive nature of the screening process. Police certificates can
I do
be
have to
requested.
interrupt. He has said something that's incorrect. Permanent residents from Pakistan are required to provide
Point of
police
order.
certificates.
Ms. O'Connell, on point of order.
Mr. Chair, that's not how this works. The questioner asks the question. The witness has the time to answer regardless of the opinion of Ms. Dancho. So I'd ask that you implement the rules that we all operate under.
I would agree with Ms. O'Connell on this point. If we could just let the minister answer.
Perhaps he can answer my question on permanent residents.
Who's posing the questions or giving the
May
testimony, but I'm glad
may
to
I
finish
pose
my
the question, then he can finish, and then we're done? I'd appreciate that. I'm sorry, are you the chair? I didn't know.
So
Are
your-
you?
Your time
Are
is
you
up.
the
That's not how
chair?
this works.
Are you
Hold
the
that.
chair?
Can we have avoid like crosstalk? So I'm sorry, your time is up. We'll go now.
No, I
to-
have 11 seconds left, Chair.
Can we hear the answer,
I have
perhaps?
11 seconds
I have
left.
3 seconds left.
All right, on permanent residents, are they required for police security checks from Pakistan, yes or no?
As a matter of
Minister may
course,
answer.
yes.
Yes, they are. Okay, exactly.
Can we hear the answer?
Yeah.
He did answer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there were a cascade of questions there, Chair. What I would say
One.
is that we are confident in our security screening and the progressive nature of them. We believe that the biometrics that every single student needs to submit with very few restrictions give us the confidence we have, and the officers in question can ask for police certificates. Again, there are questions around the validity and the reliability of
required.
those certificates.
Okay, thank you. We go now to Ms. Zaid. Ms. Zaid, 6 minutes, please.
Chair, and thank you, Minister, for coming on this important issue. Before I get to my questions, I just want to say that I'm very concerned about the rhetoric we saw from some of my conservative colleagues in the last meeting we had on this issue. This is a very serious issue, and all Canadians want us to get answers on the security processes that are in place for people who are seeking to come to Canada. But as leaders, we also have a responsibility to choose our words carefully. While we do our work, we must be careful not to cast aspersions on all immigrants or all Canadians from minority communities. Conservative members even sought to tie these cases to the Syrian refugee program, which they know is false. We must not fuel online hatred that too often becomes real world violence. I came to this country as an immigrant to build a better life for my children. In few days, it will be 25 years for me here, because Canada is welcoming and a land of opportunity. So have many other people. Canadians from minority groups are too often the target of racism and discrimination. I ask that we keep that in mind during this study. Coming to questions, Minister, my first question is, Minister, can you please outline the specific screening measures currently in place to prevent individuals with extremist ties from entering Canada? So can you please elaborate on the portion of this security screening that the IRCC is responsible for, and what happens if IRCC does identify risk indicators on an application?
Chair, point of order, please.
Yeah, point of order.
Thank you. I purposely waited until my colleague was done her question. Could we please get clarification on your ruling about the time to answer? I thought the time allotted to the member is their time to speak and use as they wanted. Would you please make a ruling on the time to answer the question so we don't keep arguing about that going? We had discussions about this last time, many times. Could we get a ruling from you? I don't believe it's in the standing orders that you have to give the same time to answer as you do to ask a question. Could you make a ruling on that, please, Chair?
What is that?
So my general practice is to give the witness a chance to answer. If you run out of time right at the end of your 6 minutes, I will generally give the witness, whomever it is, an opportunity to answer whatever question was last posed. I will hold the members to their 6 minutes or whatever the time frame is in the particular instance. Within that rubric, it is your time. However, it is, I think, Standing Order 18, as a matter of respect, to give people their, an opportunity to respond properly to the questions you ask. So I will try to adhere to that as well. So we're looking for fairness, a fair question, a fair response, and if a question is asked, the witness should be able to answer the question to as best of their ability.
Okay.
Okay. Ms. Saeed, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I asked the question, so Minister respond. Yeah.
And through you, I would echo the sentiments of MP Zaid. We would not want aspersions cast on the entire Pakistani community because of the alleged actions of one or other individuals, or the Egyptian community for that matter. And it would be lamentable for that to be the case. This is a question of some detail, so I will pass over the rest of my time to Aisha Zafar to answer that. Salma. You're good.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair, and through you, Minister Miller. So the security screening process is a trilateral program. IRCC definitely is the first line where we look at individuals before they enter Canada. We screen 100% of all applicants who come into Canada. We have these risk indicator packages, which we did talk about before. Happy to go into further detail on those. Those risk indicator packages are not only for individuals who may be engaged in terrorism. They refer to all serious inadmissibilities in IRPA. So that would include our security inadmissibilities, such as terrorism being a danger to the security of Canada, someone who may have engaged in acts of violence that would threaten Canadians, but also espionage and subversion of a government, for instance. Other serious inadmissibilities include human or international rights violations, war crimes, or organized or serious crime. So the risk indicators cover all of what we call serious inadmissibilities, of which terrorism might be one. Our officers are trained on the risk indicator packages if they do notice a risk indicator on an application. And again, that risk indicator is like a clue for the officer that there might be more investigation that needs to be done. They will refer it to CBSA and CSIS for comprehensive security screening. Once CBSA and CSIS complete their screening, they will provide back to IRCC a recommendation from a security screening perspective. So that recommendation will either be favorable, which means they have not identified a serious inadmissibility. It will be non-favorable, which means they have, or it could be inconclusive. That inconclusive would require the officer to gather more information until they could be satisfied and make a final determination. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zafar. So it would be right to say that IRCC is responsible for identifying risk indicators, and in case at that point it is passed to Canada Security Services?
Thank you for the question. So IRCC has risk indicator packages that are developed by CBSA and CSIS. The officer is responsible to determine whether or not a referral for a comprehensive security screening is required, and then the IRCC officer is responsible for the final decision on that application.
What steps are being taken to ensure that violent extremists, particularly those linked to international terror organizations, do not exploit our immigration system?
Just before I answer that question, I do want to say for the record that the individuals in question had no connection to the Syrian refugee program. Just if you look at the timeline, it's nonsensical that they would be connected to it, so it was quite obvious if people had examined the chronology in detail. I think what has been stressed, and particularly in testimony that was given to members here by Minister LeBlanc, is the tight, intimate cooperation, security sharing, and discipline that we have with our security partners, most notably Five Eyes, and our ability to seamlessly get information and act on it quickly. The confidentiality and the trust in partners is also capital. The resources within each member that comprises the Five Eyes and our other partners is key to acting quickly. And in this case, things worked and our security agencies worked, and for that I thank them. There is a reason why we have sort of a threefold approach to security in this country, outside the country, at the border, and inside. And in this case, it worked, and we should be quite proud of it.
Thank you, Ms. Saïd. On y va maintenant, Madame Michaud. Madame Michaud, allez-y.
Ms. Michaud, you have the floor. 6 minutes. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Minister, for being here. Your presence is appreciated. Welcome back, Ms. Dencho. Unfortunately, I missed some meetings on this topic, so I wonder if the issues I'll be raising have been addressed already. Mr. Minister, you said that today's discussion is to identify some of the feelings in your department when it comes to the process. When I look at the chronology of events, we do see that there were risk indicators at some point. In my opinion, these are the types of red flags that are raised in an immigration process, but there was no thorough investigation that was done, even though risk indicators had been flagged. So as we heard, when there's a risk indicator, there should be an investigation, and apparently this was not the case on several occasions on this file. When you look at this chronology of events, do you see these elements as failings? Should there have been investigations, thorough investigations at some point? There was more than one risk indicator on several occasions. That should be a red flag. So what do you think when you look at the chronology of events today? That's a very important question. You will be receiving our findings in a few weeks when it comes to the internal review to find out whether there were any failings. They might have been systemic failings, and then we'll see what to do. Secondly, it's important to say that a red flag is not a terrorist indicator. It could be something that could be resolved. And it could turn out not being a risk per se. What I do know is that the officers who took the decision did not have the information required at that time, indicating that that person should be deemed inadmissible. I cannot question the conclusion they arrived at, but we are here for a reason, and that is why we are carrying out this internal review, and that is why my deputy minister is undergoing the review, and we're taking it very seriously. Thank you. I noticed something else that is important. Normally, when we look at immigration processes in Canada, someone outside Canada requests a visitor visa and then gets to an entry point. Most of the time, will that person immediately ask for asylum, or can the person request asylum a few months later when their visitor visa expires? What is the process for such visas? The norm in mathematical terms is that most people come here for tourism. or for the reasons presented to the government and to the officers. Amongst those who request asylum, there are certain practices we've noticed, be it at the airport or these days, we're seeing people seeking asylum at Pearson or at the Trudeau airports. It's not systematic that they immediately ask for asylum. You've heard the case of students who come here as student visas and seek asylum after a few months upon reflection. And sometimes it's cause for concern when someone asked for asylum a few months after, but we live in a system of law and the people are entitled to do so. In terms of trends, the trend now is for people seeking asylum from within the country. So they get in with one visa, and increasingly they seek asylum, maybe because they find themselves in a precarious situation, their visa is expiring, or any other reason, but that's the trend that is increasing these days. Thank you. I'm asking that question because you're saying that it's maybe cause of concern when somebody asks for asylum a few months later, and in this case, the person did not seek asylum at Pearson Airport. I talked with my colleague who works at immigration or who has more information than me, and this person said, looking at the chronology, it would have been the red flag to find out why the person was seeking asylum a few months later. So I don't know if you could give us an answer. In your department, did it raise eyebrows in your department? I know you're particularly interested in this case. When you look at the chronology of events after the fact, between the time the person arrived and the time the person sought asylum, is there something that could have been done? No, normally, the refugee board takes a decision, and it's part of human behavior. The people who study the files look at the context in which the application was made, and these could be the reasons for the decision. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. McGregor, go ahead, please. 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, for appearing before our committee today to help us answer some questions on this particular and very serious situation. Similar to what was just asked to you with respect to the chronology, and I know you are awaiting an internal investigation, but I'm curious, when you have your conversations with Minister LeBlanc in his role as Minister of Public Safety, and you look at these timelines, and, thank God CSIS and the RCMP and the CBSA acted when they did. The fact that these individuals were apprehended, that they are in custody, I guess to some extent shows that the system worked. But when you're having your conversations with Minister LeBlanc, there's also the fact that they got into Canada. So when you're taking the totality of that chronology and the fact that it did end in a success, are you satisfied that the system worked? Are you satisfied that this is an overall success? Or can you opine for the committee on what your initial findings are between you and the minister?
The responsibility that Minister LeBlanc and I have is almost unimaginable. At times, we are privy to information that most Canadians aren't, related to the national security of our country. So I'm obviously never satisfied. I am happy of the men and women in uniform that were able to apprehend these individuals. And we're able to act quickly on the information that was shared with them, like they do when they share information with people abroad about activities that they may come under their eyes. Again, we can't speak to it, but clearly, when we do see a chronology like this, when we are imparted with the information that we are in a confidential, secret basis, we do ask a number of questions. We don't simply take stock in the fact that these people were caught. We look at the process and what went right, what could have gone wrong. Again, it requires facts, and hyperbole is fine, but it doesn't solve the problem. And there's no magic wand in this case to apprehending an individual. It's multi-layered. ideally, you apprehend people before they even come into the country, assuming there's no activities that turn them into different people in the country. And these are all assumptions that we have to deal with. And to get to the heart of that, we actually have to get the facts.
Thank
MP
you.
McGregor.
And are you finding, like, I mean, these individuals are obviously motivated by an ideology to commit these crimes. They were in advanced stages of planning in some cases, but overall, is your government finding that this radicalization is happening abroad, or is it happening after they've come to Canada, or is it a bit of both? Is there anything you could speak to on that? Because I think de-radicalization efforts are also an important part of the parcel here.
Well, I'd say, speaking very generally, it's probably a bit of both. We shouldn't think that radicalization doesn't occur in Canada. Terrorist networks, criminality networks work together, and they use these as tools to perpetrate horrible crimes on innocent people. And we've seen increased hate, anti-Semitic, Islamophobic hate, particularly in the current context. And that does impact behavior, sometimes of younger cohorts of the population as well, as we've seen in some other apprehensions. And so, to answer your question quite succinctly, a little bit of both.
Yeah, and I just want to get one more question, if I can. I mean, I think you're lucky that I'm speaking to you here today, not the person who does casework in my office, because you know, our office has a lot of frustration with the immigration and citizenship file, and we're certainly very familiar with how long it can take to do a security check, and I understand the necessity of that. But there's probably a lot of families who are looking at this situation, who have gone through all of the formal procedures, done everything correctly, played by the rules, and they're still waiting, and yet they see this happen. So I guess, as a minister, this is your chance to take accountability, and what would you say to those families?
We're seeing, MP McGregor, an unprecedented volume of people that want to come to Canada. It's not a right, it's a privilege. And for those that successfully go through the comprehensive screening process, for whatever reason they're coming to Canada, whether it's just a visit or to become a permanent resident, and eventually a Canadian citizen, they do have to go through these processes, and we take them quite seriously. This is a service delivery ministry, and you know, when things go slowly, it's frustrating. When we're not in current processing time, it's frustrating. I can act sometimes in my role to see what's going on in individual files, and indeed with your interactions with my team, you've seen that we're quite responsive. But the one thing we won't compromise is the security checks. We will never get involved in fettering or waiving the work of our trained professionals to screen these people. And they have limited resources. And when there are limited resources and the volume that we're seeing, it does take time. Immensely frustrating for people who perhaps have no issues with their files, but it's something that I really can't fetter the discretion of our well-trained agents.
25 seconds.
I'm okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGregor. We'll start our second round of questions at this point with Ms. Lansman, please. 5 minutes.
Thanks for being here, Minister. Since our last meeting, another ISIS terrorist was arrested. A plot was foiled. You mentioned, you alluded to that in your opening commentary with Mr. Khan. You previously told Canadians that that there was criminal background checks for temporary residents. There's actually no requirement for a police certificate. So I'm going to go back to that because you were very unclear. In 2018, the government removed, means it doesn't require the police background checks. That's police clearance certificates from some countries of origin. In the case that we're talking about, Pakistan is included in that, and it turns out that the student that your incompetent predecessor gave a visa to is part of that. You removed the security checks. Your government removed the security checks. Now, you know that this guy was arrested. You know that a terrorist plot was foiled with the help of U.S. intelligence. You know that he was off to Brooklyn to kill Jews. Have you removed or have you reinstated that requirement for security checks that you previously told Canadians that were in place?
Again, Mr. Chair, through you, I don't want to, in answer, give the impression that I'm validating a number of the facts that I cannot or alleged facts that I cannot speak about publicly. I think my question to you, MP Lanceman, is should we assume that were police certificates to have been attained, we would have apprehended this individual? We are confident in the way our biometric system works, in the progressive screening that operates in our country, and I think we should disabuse ourselves of the notion that Canada is hermetically sealed, and but for one procedure, we would have stopped something. It's highly theoretical. It's quite speculative.
It's actually not, Minister. I'm going to jump in because you require those police certificates for permanent residence. Now, whether you know that or not, that's a fact and it's the case. So why wouldn't you require them for student visas? This is how this guy got in. You can ask your predecessor, Sean Fraser. He let him in. And I know that you're cleaning up a mess, and I know that you're cleaning up a mess where I think this government has ruined a generational consensus on immigration. But why do you take them for permanent residence and not student visas? Why is there a different security check if this is the terrorist plot that was foiled under this guy?
Not everyone that comes to this country is entitled to become a permanent resident of Canada or indeed a citizen. We take a progressive risk assessment approach. The approach works. I'm not saying it's perfect. And again, you're assuming a lot of facts that are not in evidence to draw a conclusion that may not have been.
What are you talking about? There was an arrest made for an ISIS plot of a terrorist that was about to kill people. The Minister of Public Safety, during the last time that happened, which was just weeks before that arrest, another 2 people were arrested. Guy was in an ISIS snuff video. He went through 6 different channels of immigration, 4 flags. He was checked 6 times by this country, and he was given a citizenship. Like, what on earth are you talking about? This is 2 terrorists. How can you assure Canadians that there are no more if you don't understand your own department?
Again, let me repeat, and I cannot deviate because, as you'll well appreciate, there is a criminal case.
You talked about it in your opening statement. I'm asking you a question.
Lanceman.
Well, you've introduced to this committee a number of alleged facts that I cannot speak to, and I
It's
don't
a
want
fact.
to
You lied about it on
necessarily-
TV.
Again, I
Ms.
think,
Lanceman.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Lanceman, this language is unparliamentary. I would ask you to
I
apologize.
will retract that. You misled Canadians about it on TV.
Again, Mr. Chair, through you, as indicated in the chronologies, I do want to speak to the decision-making of the officers in question that determined that there was no evidence presented to the decision-makers themselves at the time that would have rendered these individuals inadmissible.
So you're missing evidence. You don't require that evidence. Isn't the last thing or the least you can do is require that evidence, given that a terrorist plot was foiled? There has been 2 in the last month and a half. There has been 1 since Minister LeBlanc sat there and said the system is working as it should. Clearly, there's something wrong, and we have to make sure that you can assure Canadians that this won't happen again, and you've remedied nothing.
I'm failing to understand the argument. Is the argument that requiring police certificates would have dispensed of all the investigatory work and the work done by our officers to foil this plot? I would submit respectively, no.
We go now to Mr. Gahir. 5 minutes, please.
Great, thank you, Chair. And Minister, thank you for appearing before the committee. Immigration has certainly been in the news a lot for the past year. I think generally we do have a great immigration system, and tweaks are needed from time to time, and you're certainly making those tweaks now, and they're very welcome. I did want to ask about this particular case. And I do want to make the point that as an office that deals with a very high level of immigration work, that for every 1 individual that gains temporary access to Canada to visit, there are multiples more that are denied for the merits of the file itself. But I guess I want to ask, for cases where there is limited or unreliable data from the country of origin, how does your department handle that?
It really, I'm going to pass.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair, and through you, Minister Miller. So you're right that there are certain places where the information that may be available is less reliable. But our officers need to be satisfied that an individual is not inadmissible to Canada so that they don't pose any threat, they don't have any inadmissibilities. Working closely with our security partners, such as CBSA and CSIS, as well as our partnerships with our Five Eyes and other international partners, we're able to collect information that can help strengthen the inadmissibility assessment of any applicant. If the officer is not satisfied, they can continue to ask for more information. So for instance, they may require things such as police certificates, employment history, documents that will allow the officer to be satisfied that the individual does not pose a risk to Canada. In addition to that, we collect biometrics, and biometrics are an important part of the immigration system because it's not just for a security screening purpose where we're identifying if there's criminality, but it's also to anchor identity. So it's the first time we might see an individual, and using those biometrics and sharing those with our partners also helps us understand identity and determine if there's any derogatory information that exists on that individual.
Appel au règlement, Monsieur le Président. Merci.
Michaud, on a point of order.
Oui, juste avant que Monsieur.
Just before the minister gives the floor to gave the floor, his mic was closed, so we did not get the French interpretation of his question. Could they please repeat so we could receive the interpretation?
Question and, repeat the answer.
You want me to
French,
be the translation services? I'm glad to give it a go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Comme l'a dit ma collègue,
As my colleague said, there are lots of information that could be requested. What wasn't said in English that I will be adding is that we can also request interviews. If there are any risk indicators, we can request a police certificate. I'm not minimizing their importance, but I also don't want to go off on a tangent as your conservative colleagues did. If it requires more information, there are lots of ways of obtaining it. But I would like to underscore the fact that biometrics are very important, and it's a very reliable but not perfect way for us to verify and check people who want to come to Canada. We have access to the database of our partners in Canada and abroad. I did the best I could with the translation. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Gahir, I'll give you a few extra seconds.
Thank you, Chair. So, Minister, what about a case where, let's say, the individual in question does not have a criminal history, the biometrics come back clean, if there's an interview conducted, that interview is good, it seems like a decent person, but somewhere online, in the dark web, whatever that means, there's a video of them engaging in sort of these kinds of acts. Is it even theoretically possible to search? Millions of people want to come to this country, possibly billions, right? Is it even theoretically possible to search every single video and every single audio clip that's available online for every single individual that wants to come to Canada? Is that even theoretically possible?
I'd love to give you my answer on that, MP Gahir, but it really is up to our security services to speak to the nature and quality of that search. It is becoming increasingly, I think they would say, is becoming increasingly easier, but is still something that is quite difficult and not necessarily routine, especially for clean matters with no flags.
Sure. One more quick question to make up for the time that.
Sure. Do the officials have data on how many individuals are denied possibly every single month or in the past year?
We don't have it offhand, but we can provide it to the committee.
Sure. I'd like to see that just because it highlights just how strict our system is and how hard it actually is, despite people's feelings, how hard it is to get a visitor visa to come to Canada. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gahir. On y va maintenant, Madame Michaud.
Ms. Michaud, 2.5 minutes. Thank you, Chair. Mr. Minister, I know that you'll be sending out findings on any failings if they exist, what should be improved. I agree with what was said before. If there were 3 examples, there may be others, so this shows that there may be a loophole in the system. So it may be necessary to improve the security checking system. You talked about the lateral cooperation. I noted that increasingly there are more permanent residents in Canada. The system is bogged down, and as I told my NDP colleague, in our ridings, we see this every day. We see citizens who've been waiting for a response on their files for years, and it's difficult for us to tell them what to do. It's a complicated and rigorous process, we do know, but when we see cases like this one, we think it may be necessary for the system to stay rigorous. So what is your observation today? I don't know if you could tell us more. Do you have the intention to improve the security system? Luckily, a disaster was avoided thanks to our police services and the CSI and CSIS. What can be done to improve the immigration system if there's a failing? Let me know what you think. I would not conclude that we are not doing what we need to do now. Criminal associations are very sophisticated, and we need to adjust every time. And things are being done gradually, internally within my department, and also within the security agencies. If there's need for change, you will be notified in the coming weeks. But of course, we need to stay alert. Canada is not the only country that is dealing with such threats. It's become clear. I know it's not reassuring, but this, if I said this was an exception to the rule, if there's a disaster, we are all responsible, particularly if somebody loses their life. So I would like to congratulate the security agencies who interfered in time. So, but I'm not totally satisfied with the situation. Thank you.
Now to Mr. McGregor, 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister Miller, I did take note of your comment that there is no compromise on security. Absolutely. I was just curious though, because in your department's most recent annual report, there is reference to automation technologies being used to help streamline. Are any of those automation technologies, do they ever intersect with the security screening? And do you have any concerns that that might lead to a gap in the future?
When it comes to automation, I think the clear conclusion is that it can in no time be a shortcut to any matters of security, particularly those of national security. I think they aim to speed up the process for sure, but without compromising these strict security parameters. And I think that's something that we have to constantly adjust and adapt to, particularly with the looming use and leveraging of AI in people seeking to come into this country. I think that's a worry that we are looking at and need to be ready for. This is a department that was criticized, I think rightly, for doing a lot by hand. That human aspect can make some errors, but I think the automation can also make some as well.
I want to get one more in. I think the information leading to the LDD arrest may have come from French intelligence, and hopefully one day Canada can return the favor and provide intelligence to our allies that prevents a terror attack abroad. But from your position as a Minister of Immigration, I know there's still an internal review going on, but are you fairly satisfied that our international information sharing, particularly amongst our allies, is as robust as it could be?
I don't think anyone in my position can ever be satisfied. I am confident, though, and with significant confidence, that our information agencies are doing their utmost to the sharing of information is critical. If we don't have that information, we can't cross-correlate, can't verify. And in order to draw a conclusion in a specific case, you would have to put in evidence a number of facts that would qualify why a particular agency may have had some information that was shared and why perhaps we didn't have it. Again, so it's hard to speculate on that openly currently. But again, looking at the set of facts, I'm confident that we acted quickly and that we did the right thing.
Thank you, Mr. McGregor. So, Minister, you've been here an hour. I'm wondering if we have a 5-minute slot and a 5-minute slot. I wonder if we can prevail upon you to stay for those?
I have a competing engagement. So
You're unable?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. Well, thank you, Minister, for being here. And in that case, we'll suspend and bring in the next panel. I would like to welcome the new officials who are joining officials from IRCC at the table. With the Canadian Border Services Agency, we have Ted Gallivan, Executive Vice President. With Canadian Security Intelligence Agency, we have Vanessa Lloyd, Interim Director. And from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, we have Michelle Duhem, Commissioner. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. So we'll start straight away with questions. This panel has no opening statements, so we'll go first to Madame Ms. Dancho. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the officials for being with us today on this very important topic. First, immigration. On the 2018 requirement or removal of the requirement for the police certificate, clearance certificates from country of origin, Pakistan was one of those. Is there consideration being given amongst the department to reinstate the requirement, not the option, but that it was required for Pakistan and others that may have been impacted by the 2018 change? Is that being considered in the department?
So thank you for the question, Chair. And I think the Minister pointed out that we are going to do a full evaluation of what transpired, and based on all of those information received, what can we do better, and if there are things which we need to do differently, we will consider that.
Okay, I appreciate that you can't. Okay, thank you very much. But can you confirm for me that, I think the Minister did, but just to confirm again, permanent residents require that police certificate clearance from countries like Pakistan, but student visas do not, correct?
Can I please turn to Aisha on that one to be very doubly sure about that?
Okay.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. So permanent residents are asked for police certificates. There's a difference in the threat and the risk level for temporary residents where they're coming for a temporary purpose. So there's different requirements for those coming for a temporary stay versus a permanent stay. Permanent residents would require that have different requirements, more enhanced, in fact, because of the rights that would be provided to them and their ability to stay in Canada.
I appreciate that you described that certificate clearance as more enhanced screening measure. That's my understanding. You used the words more enhanced. Is that correct?
Thank you for the question. So I should correct myself. It's not necessarily more enhanced. It's a different, perhaps, different expectations for an officer, because now they are assessing a different type of resident. So when they're assessing somebody who's coming here for a temporary stay, they will request all of the information and documents they need for that duration of stay. When we have a permanent resident or perhaps a citizen, they will ask for the appropriate documentation that would satisfy them based on the fact that they would have different rights in Canada.
I would ask in your review that you, as the official opposition critic for public safety, I'd ask that you do strongly reconsider re-implementing or putting in additional, whatever measures we can possibly put in place to ensure there's extra screening. I do ask that you please do so, as I'm sure you are. I do want to ask the RCMP and a few questions as well. My understanding is you got your hands on the video, the alleged video from 2015 of this, the ISIS video of that individual being dismembered. What was your next course of action? Was it to inform the RCC, or was it to inform CSIS, or who found out first and told whom? Just trying to establish in brief in 1 minute, if you could tell me.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, my recollection is the RCMP did not have that video initially.
At no time?
No time.
That's interesting.
When it was shared, when it was known, when it became
known. And CBSA?
Copy of the video, further to media reports, is a copy we took in the context of lessons learned, opportunities to improve, go forward.
You never had it you didn't know about it until media reports. Neither
Correct.
CBSA or the RCMP were aware. Was CSIS aware? I guess you can't speak for CSIS. Oh, sorry, I'm so sorry. You can, of course you can. My apologies.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. Can you hear me? Yes, thank you. I believe in our last session, we spoke about the requirements to be careful about what was shared between the agencies in the context of the ongoing investigation. And what I would point the honourable member to is in the chronology, the reference that as soon as CSIS became aware of threat information, which was in June of 2024, that we began to take action to mitigate the threat.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Chair, with my remaining 30 seconds, I'm going to give it to MP Shipley. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ms. Dancho, for this time. Chair, I would like to be moving the motion that I put on notice the other day, please, and in regards to lengthening this study. I just wanted to make this a very short preamble, and hopefully we can get back to...
I'm sorry, which motion? You did several motions, I believe.
Well, I can read it out. I have it here. Given that you have it, clerk. Given that the RCMP have arrested an additional alleged ISIS terrorist who was preparing to carry out a massacre. Who was preparing to carry out a massacre targeting the Jewish community in New York City, the committee expanded its review of the foiled terrorist plot in Toronto and of the security screening process for permanent residence and citizenship application by no less than 8 meetings to further examine how alleged ISIS terrorists are able to enter and reside in Canada, that the Minister of Public Safety and his officials be invited to reappear for no less than 2 hours, that IRCC officials, CBSA officials, RCMP officials, and CSIS officials be invited to reappear before the committee, and that no more than one minister, agency, or department testify at a time. And I'll speak very briefly to this, as I was saying, Chair. I really do want to get back to our study at hand. Obviously, I'm looking for more time. We're finding out a lot of information here, but there's a lot of information yet to come out. And one of the interesting things that the minister just in the last hour mentioned was, and I'll quote him, we will be findings in a few weeks of their study. That would be great to be able to bring up in this study that we're doing here. So that's one of the other reasons we want to lengthen this. So therefore, I hope all of our committee members can agree to this. I'm not going to go on long about this. Hopefully we can agree that this is an important study. Canadians need this. There's some fears out there right now. We need to make sure there's going to be some corrections coming, and I'll leave that on the floor, and hopefully this passes.
Thank you, Mr. Shipley. We go now to Ms. O'Connell.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to move an amendment to this, and I'll just read my entire motion, which begins as Mr. Shipley has put it on the record, but given that the RCMP have arrested an additional alleged ISIS terrorist who was preparing to carry out a massacre targeting the Jewish community in New York City, the committee expanded its review of the foiled terrorist plot in Toronto and the security screening process for permanent residence and citizenship to include questions around this more recent arrest in its meetings. And then I'd like to speak to my amendment.
So is your amendment ending the paragraph there?
It ends it. The difference is that it ends it after permanent residence and citizenship application and include questions around its more recent arrest in its meetings.
Okay. So the remaining text
is deleted.
Is deleted, okay. So we are on the amendment now.
Sorry, I'd like to speak to my amendment.
Oh, sorry, I apologize.
Thank you. I was just making sure everyone was caught up.
So Ms. Dancho, Mr. McGregor, and then Mr.
So the rationale, Mr. Chair, is the fact that throughout this meeting, in the context of the original motion, the minister has been asked questions about this third alleged terror plot. He answered those questions. There were 2 rounds by the Conservatives. All parties had a chance to ask on that. There was no objections raised by us, although it was outside technically of the scope of the meeting. But these are important questions that Canadians want answers to. We have all of the agencies listed in the original motion here now, and had the member not interrupted the meeting, they would have had the opportunity to ask those very questions. We have absolutely no issue of expanding the scope, but all of those questions can be posed to the individuals that have been listed and the responsible agencies. So I would hope that there is support around the table for this amendment to just ensure that the scope is expanded. However, the Conservatives, if they want to, could just take over the committee and not allow for us to actually conduct our business and ensure that all parties have the opportunity to ask appropriate questions. If they just want to filibuster the rest of the meeting, that's going to be on them, but we are certainly supportive of expanding the scope as we already have in the previous panel. Thanks, Mr. Chair, and I'll ask for a recorded vote on my amendment.
Okay, is there any Ms. Michaud? What's that?
Juste avant qu'on continue,
Just before we continue discussions on the amendment, could we receive a version of the amendment in the two languages, a written version? Because I didn't quite get the amendment. So before we continue, before we vote on it.
Is that available?
Amended it on my paper, so
Okay.
I'll have to just
So we'll
amend it on
suspend
my
for a few
paper.
minutes and get that underway. So suspended. Ms. O'Connell spoke. Madame Michaud was next. Allez-y, s'il vous plaît.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted the French version. Now I have it. There have been discussions between the parties, so I will yield the floor to my colleagues before I take the floor again.
Yeah, similar to what Ms. Michaud just said, we've had some conversations. I think like some of my concerns are that, you know, number one, officials are operating, they can't tell us everything about these cases. There's also, they don't want to impede the prosecution's ability in the court case. And we are also awaiting an interim report. So with all those factors in mind, I think we've come to an agreement, and I'll also cede my time so we can progress to the next speakers.
Thank you, Ms. McGregor. Ms. Dancho, I believe you're next.
Oh, thank you, Chair. A few things. So we have had discussions, and so I'll propose it to our Liberal colleagues shortly. But first of all, I would say that this amendment by Ms. O'Connell does change the scope of the motion that we put forward, and so my understanding is that it's not admissible then. Like if you're changing the scope of the amendment, or the scope of the motion with an amendment, it doesn't work. It's just not how this works, is my understanding. It just changed. So I just want to point that out. I'm not going to stick to it, but the amendment fundamentally changes what we were asking for, and my understanding that's not appropriate for amendments. But we'll leave it there, but just if the next time there is an amendment to a motion, if we just make sure that that is being followed. But we do have an alternative proposal, but I don't believe I can make an amendment to an amendment. Is that correct? Right. Oh, you are correct. Thank you very much to both of you for confirming that. It's been about a year, so I'm a little rusty. But I would like to propose, I suppose, a sub-amendment, but first I'll just discuss it and then I'll move the sub-amendment. So recognizing that we have had officials' time come, and we very much appreciate that. And the minister has made quite clear, and Minister LeBlanc alluded to this as well, of course, and it's been public, that there's ongoing investigations, both in immigration, and I know CSIS and the RCMP and CBSA are also involved in that. And the minister said today that he made it sound in quite short order, a number of weeks, I believe was the quote, that we would be that would be concluded, alluding to several times that we may have answers by then. So I appreciate that there's an investigation and Canadians expect that. So to give that a little bit of time, I think what we would propose is, since we've already agreed as a committee to have 3 additional meetings outside this current one, so 3 extra was already agreed to, rather than ask for more, we would amend the original motion, or this one, whatever works best, to say that both the Minister of Public Safety and the Minister of Immigration would come respectively 2 hours each, plus officials. So that's what would be included in those remaining 3 meetings. But the ministers each would come for 2 hours themselves, plus officials. And that way we can ask them response questions, or ask them questions in response to the investigation, because it is a bit like we're hitting a wall, and I think Canadians, the Jewish community, others deserve answers on this, and we've been hitting that, it's under investigation wall. So would like to give the minister the opportunity to respond once he can tell us more about the findings, and the Minister of Public Safety, I do believe, I'm sure he would agree to it, to come back and answer once he has more information as well. So our proposal is that. So I could amend this motion, or I could amend the original one, whatever you think would be better.
Well, let me understand. So the motion is amended by Mr. Connell.
So I could put a sub-amendment in it.
What I understand is you would like to add to that.
I could move a sub-amendment, is what I'm asking. I just want to make sure that that's what you'd prefer logistically, yeah.
So you want to add to that amendment as one option, that we invite the both ministers individually to appear for 2 hours each in the remaining 3 meetings.
Once we have
more information. So that would,
and I would include in that in a couple weeks. So if months go by, just in the spirit of this, if months go by and well, it's taking a long time, and I'm sure it may, but again, he said weeks, and I'd like us to stick to that. So
we can. That's all kind of.
So I don't want it to be April 2025, and we still haven't heard a thing. Canadians deserve answers now.
But you can get back at us. Hold our feet to the fire on that. Absolutely.
All right.
So.
The sub-amendment actually is then, because it's a rambling of talking and moving. So is the
So you moved it, yeah.
sub-amendment, is the sub-amendment that in the remaining 3 meetings be the ministers for 2 hours each when the reports or when the findings are completed?
That's my understanding. Is that, Ms.
Well, I'd
Dennis?
like to know before we vote on
Yeah,
anything.
well, she actually hasn't formally moved the motion, so, is that what we understand correctly?
Please repeat.
So, in the remaining 3 meetings of the current study, you are proposing to amend Ms. O'Connell's motion or amendment to invite each of the 2 ministers to appear for 2 hours each,
Plus officials,
plus officials,
for a total of 3 meetings.
for a total of 3 meetings. So there will be one other meeting that, so one minister for one meeting, one minister for another meeting.
And officials.
And officials.
Correct.
Oh, and we have Goodale, yes.
No, that's not what they said. Sorry. This is my motion, like, if there's going to be a sub-amendment, we should have a sub-amendment moved and then speak to it. But the sub-amendment, as I've heard it just now, is 3 more meetings with each minister and officials after the reports are completed.
Right. So I'll let you move the motion, and I should advise the committee that we do have Ralph Goodale confirmed for next week.
Perfect.
So that would take up a 3rd meeting, so.
Okay.
For 1 hour for next week, right? Okay. If you'd like to move your sub-amendment, we'll get things squared away and.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll move it momentarily. Just recall when I was on this committee last, we were able to work together despite not agreeing on a lot. We were able to get a lot of work done. So in effort to do that, I would like to move a sub-amendment to Ms. O'Connell. And again, given that we didn't have notice of this sub-amendment, do the best I can to make it make sense. So I'll just read hers and then I'll give it my best shot. So given that the RCMP have arrested an additional alleged ISIS terrorist who is preparing to carry out a massacre targeting the Jewish community in New York City, the committee expand its review of the foiled terrorist plot in Toronto and of the security screening process for permanent residence and citizenship application, includes questions around this more recent arrest in its meeting, and invite both the Minister of Public Safety and the Minister of Immigration to return for 2 hours respectively with officials once the investigative findings have progressed, we'll say. I think would maybe be the best open-ended word, sir. Thank you.
Is that clear to everybody? Yes. Madame Michaud, allez-y.
Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. Could we have a French version of the sub-amendment by email? I believe the clerk is working on it right now. I like the idea that we will postpone until we receive the minister's responses. That would allow us to continue on the other things we have to do. We already have 2 reports to verify on auto theft and also the transfer of delinquents. So I think this will allow us move forward with our work. So I don't know if the clerk can tell us after sending out the emails what work is left for us to do. To be sure, 3 meetings, 1 next week with Mr. Goodale, 1st hour, 2nd hour, the officials, 2nd meeting, Minister Miller, 3rd meeting, Minister LeBlanc. I just want to be sure that's what you were saying.
Pretty close. Are you guys doing the amendment or the? I'm translating. Okay. So we're going to get the sub-amendment out there. Okay. Yeah. So currently we have Mr. Goodale scheduled for next Thursday, and my thought was that Tuesday we would work on the Ottawa study, right? We only have Mr. Goodale for 1 hour on Thursday, and we haven't really lined up anybody else for the 2nd hour, because we've actually gone through the whole list of witnesses from the original motion. But I would suggest, because I think these fine folk here are dying to tell us more information, that perhaps we could invite them back for the 2nd hour of Mr. Goodale.
Chair, that's not what's on the floor, with all due respect. There's a sub-amendment moved that we must be dealing with, and to then propose other new versions of it is up to the committee to decide. And I would actually like to get back to the witnesses at hand. We've prepared for this. So to suggest if you want to hold a subcommittee meeting to discuss the planning, we can do so. However, that's not appropriate now when we have a sub-amendment, an amendment, and an amendment.
Right, so the discussion I'm having is really not to do with the amendments.
Right,
The
but-
amendments are in process.
But then let us go back to
Once-
questioning.
Once the sub-amendment is distributed,
Then we should
we'll have a
recess. We should
discussion on it,
recess.
And we will vote on it.
Then we should pause until we have the wording.
Fair enough. We'll suspend.
sorry, sooner, was not said on the record. And you can't move a sub-amendment to an amendment, so we'd have to vote on the main motion and then, or sorry, vote on the sub-amendment.
So you can't move an amendment to
Either
a
way, I'm going to get
sub-amendment.
to it.
Right, but what I'm saying is, you can't, what was said on the record that we were just getting translated, during the break, additional language was attempted to be added that was not said on the record, so that can't be included on what we're voting for now. If at the conclusion of those votes, someone wants to move that further,
Okay,
then they
I
can do so,
think
but
that's a
that's
fair-
not
that's a
on
fair
the
point.
record.
I'll take that point. Ms. Stancho.
I agree that it's a fair point. So we can either vote on what was said, and I know that, Mr. Clerk, you had typed that up, and then I will propose that either way. So we can do it quick or we can do it slow. So it's, and I know, I believe some of the other parties are in agreement with the 28 days, just to ensure some accountability. So we can do it whichever way you'd like. We could either do UC and allow me to just make that edit, or I can try to do it after. But either way, it's going to take longer the second way, so I'm game for either.
Okay, so are we clear what the original sub-amendment is without this other additional text? Are we clear? Are we ready to vote on that sub-amendment? Okay,
This one that's been sent around, or what I said?
what you said.
Okay, well, then I'm going to have to speak after then. So I'm on the
Okay.
speaking list for after.
All right, so are there no more speakers on the sub-amendment, as was said? None? So let's call a vote on the sub-amendment. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, so now we're back to the amendment as sub-amended. And Ms. Dancho.
Thank you, sir. I would like to move just a very brief, quick sub-amendment to what we just passed, or amendment, pardon me. Or I suppose it is a sub-amendment still. So a sub-amendment to what we just passed to Ms. O'Connell's amendment. I think I'm getting confused of how many amendments we're working on, but I think you know what I mean. Ultimately, I would just say that at what we just passed, I would add the end as follows and also say it in French, or within 28 days of the adoption of this motion, whichever is sooner. I believe that's in order from what I said, adding this at the end, just to be clear. And en français, à la fin de
At the end of the investigation conducted by our IRCC within 28 days following adoption of this motion, depending on which happens before. The interpreters do not have a copy of the document. I believe that was explained properly.
Second sub-amendment, are we clear on that?
Yes, and the purpose is, Mr. Chair, just to ensure some accountability on this, that just to be clear of what I'm putting forward, we've agreed that we'll bring the ministers back each for 2 hours, and a few other things there in the original, what we just passed, but we're just putting some accountability on it. Either we hear from the ministers from some investigation, or in 28 days he comes back, they both come back and talk to us. So it's just to be clear.
So, but also to be clear, we can't compel the ministers to show up on a particular
Well, we can
schedule, right?
politely ask.
We will always politely ask.
Thank you, sir.
So is there any further discussion on Ms. Dancho's second sub-amendment? Seeing none, all in favor of the second sub-amendment? Opposed? Carried. Okay, so now we're to the amendment as doubly sub-amended. Is there any discussion on the amendment as amended? Yeah. Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Okay, so now we go back to the motion itself as.
No, we did
That
the
was the
sub-amendment, the
amendment.
amendment, and
That was
the
your
motion
amendment
is-
as amended.
Okay.
So we now go back to the original motion as amended. Any discussion? No? I'm hoping no. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Very well. Okay. So we're next. Okay. Go ahead. Ms. Demoff, please.
Thank you, Chair. And just before I get to my questions with the witnesses, I just wanted to read a notice of motion that I submitted, and when I'm finished, I'm going to ask for unanimous consent to deal with it today. That pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and given recent charges by the United States Department of Justice against RT, the Russian state media broadcaster, in a scheme to funnel $10 million to a media organization in North America, and that Canadian companies and individuals have been found to be connected to this Russian propaganda effort, the committee invite the following witnesses to testify for no less than 2 hours on their participation in the Russian-backed interference and far-right disinformation campaigns intended to manipulate the Canadian public. A. Lauren Chen, B. Liam Donovan, C. Lauren Southern. The committee also invite concerned civil society representatives and disinformation experts to further examine the risks of this concerning activity. 1. Marcus Kolga, journalist. 2. Aaron Schull, Managing Director at the Centre for International Governance Innovation. 3. Wesley Wark, Senior Fellow at Centre for International Governance Intervention. Stephanie Carvin, Professor at Carleton University. 5. Thomas Junot, Professor at the University of Ottawa. 6. Shelley Bruce, former Chief of the Communications Security Establishment. 7. Richard Fadden, former Director of CSIS. 8. Guillaume Sira, representative of the Russian-Canadian Democratic Alliance. 9. Mark Power, representative of the Russian-Canadian Democratic Alliance. And 10. Alexandra Chisidze, President of the Ukrainian-Canadian Congress. That the committee report its findings to the House, and that pursuant to Standing Order 109, that the government table a comprehensive response to the report. Chair, this was submitted to the clerk, but it hasn't been 48 hours, so I wonder if I could have unanimous consent to deal with this now.
Yes. Do we have unanimous consent to deal with this motion at this time?
Yes.
Yes? Very well.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to speak to the motion if I could.
I'm taking that we have unanimous consent to move the motion, so.
Oh, okay.
So moved.
So I will move the motion then, Chair.
Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's fine, Chair. I'm sorry, I'm just checking my time.
Rappel au règlement, Monsieur le Président.
Call to order, Chair.
This is going to take up the rest of our meeting. I wonder if we can release the witnesses at this point. Great. Thank you to all you witnesses for joining us. I know it's a fun place to be in an afternoon, and we will invite you back, I'm pretty sure. So thank you all.
And we have 10 minutes left.
10 minutes? Okay. So we have 10 minutes available for this at this point. So I'm sorry, Mr. Moff, I cut you off, I think.
How much time have I got left, Chair?
It's not limited.
Well,
okay.
Thank you.
So,
yes, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. And I know we don't have a lot of time left, but I did want to speak to this. Russia is known to use right-wing commentators in various countries, particularly in the West, to disseminate disinformation as a part of its broader influence operations. These commentators, often with large followings and credibility among right-wing conservative audience, are used as conduits for spreading pro-Russian narratives or divisive content and applying issues like nationalism, anti-immigrant sentiment, skepticism of mainstream media, and distrust of democratic institutions. Russia seeks to destabilize its adversaries from within and create chaos. This strategy involves seeding disinformation or half-truths that influencers repeat through social media and alt news platforms. This tactic helps Russia achieve its geopolitical objectives by fostering division, polarization, and undermining confidence in the democratic process. I know I've had concerns about this issue for quite some time and was quite upset when I saw the charges that were laid by the United States on this. You know, it's something that I think all of us need to be looking at, and I'm hoping that we can vote to adopt this motion today. I know we don't have a lot of time left, Chair, so I may finish there so that we can adopt the motion.
Thank you. We'll go now to Mr. Lloyd.
Oh, I'd like to pass my time on.
Ms. Dancho, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the motion, Ms. Damoff. I do appreciate the witnesses on here. There's some excellent witnesses on here, well selected. What I would say is it's a bit unusual to include a limited list of witnesses, so I would just appreciate if all parties had the opportunity. I know Mr. Lloyd, who is it that you mentioned? We've had him here before. Christian Lupark, we've had him here before. I don't know if the Bloc or the NDP would also like to add witnesses, but just to provide everyone an opportunity to ensure we have a robust list would be great, but otherwise I see no problems, other than it just wasn't mentioned how many meetings. Is that just open-ended, or?
It was intended to be open-ended.
Okay.
Mr. Elbas.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. I'm not a member of the committee, but I find this very fascinating. What I would suggest is perhaps, there be some time given so that all parties can contribute witnesses, and then maybe the clerk and yourself could come up with, contact to see who is actually interested in coming to speak, at this upcoming study, and then perhaps the amount of meetings would then take shape, and then you could maybe present it back to the committee.
So the motion is moved as it is. So perhaps an amendment can be made. Mrs. O'Connell. Mr.
On the
McGregor.
speaking list, I have a suggestion to offer, but you're right, you're on the speaking list. Chair, can you add
Thank
one?
you, Chair. No problems with the motion. There are some people I'd like to add. So, probably I'd seek a very slight amendment that, for the list that it includes but is not limited to, because I would like to see, people like Rachel Curran, who is head of public policy at Meta, Steve DeIyer, Director of Public Policy and Government Affairs for TikTok Canada, Lindsay Doyle, Head of Government Affairs and Policy at YouTube. These are the platforms where a lot of these people have their content on. We know from previous studies at this committee that a lot of these big social media giants are not even addressing their own terms of service. So I'd like to see those folks included. Now, I'm fine with having them listed here, or to give everyone a chance to present their own witnesses, maybe we just include language, includes this list but is not limited to. I'm fine either way.
Would you like to make that amendment? Propose that amendment?
I will include the amendment that, just a very slight amendment in advance of the list of 10 people there, that includes these people but is not limited to them.
Okay. Any discussion on Mr. McGregor's sub-amendment or amendment? None? All in favor of Mr. McGregor's amendment? Opposed? Carried. Okay. We're back to the motion as amended, and we have Ms. Dancho. No? We have Ms. O'Connell.
I'm fine with that amendment now.
Okay. Mr. Albas.
So again, I'm not the one who's probably going to do the study, but would it be, Mr. Chair, that you would then work with the clerk to get committee witnesses, and it would be helpful for all parties to know when they need to submit by, and then perhaps the clerk you can maybe inform the committee how many meetings you think it'll take based on once people have been contacted.
That's generally the way we work anyway, but it's not part of the amendment. It's not part of the motion. It is. Ms. Dancho, please go ahead.
Just since I'm stepping back into it, just as an aside, is the expectation that this happens immediately? Then when do we get our witnesses? And just Mr. Albas's point, and are we interrupting any studies that may have been ongoing before? I'm actually not certain. I've heard different things. So are we doing this now, or are we finishing other things first?
Well, that's really up to the committee to decide.
Okay.
So we have, next week is kind of scheduled. The following week is kind of open. So I would suggest that maybe amendment that the parties provide a witness list, additional witnesses by Wednesday next week, so that we have a chance to schedule them.
It's not very many days. That's 4 days.
Committee to determine timing, but the motion stands, and with that amendment, it allows for additional witnesses, and it's always done in relation to the parties, so that's kind of a given.
So we could, instead of dealing with the auto report on Tuesday, we could have a subcommittee meeting, I suppose. But, Mr. Shipley, go ahead.
Chair, you had mentioned earlier today that I believe next week you had Mr. Goodale coming for 1 hour, and the second hour you had nothing scheduled for. Maybe that's when that subcommittee could be had to finalize all these issues.
Well, I think that works really well. So that's really not part of this whole motion. Ms. Michaud, I'm willing to, I think that makes sense. I could try to work that in, but Ms. Michaud, please go.
Je veux juste m'assurer quand c'est.
I'm just trying to find out when would be the right time to discuss what study we'll be doing when. If we have a subcommittee next Thursday after the hour with Mr. Goodale, I think we'll be okay. I just want to propose that we finish what we have on the table before we start with that other study. Or do you think we should insert it in the motion? I will be ready to propose an amendment. But if we all agree that we finish with the two reports before we move on to that, that will be okay. I don't see the benefit of inserting it right now, but I just want to make sure that we all agree.
Mr. Connell?
I would just suggest with that point as well is that we should just schedule a subcommittee so subcommittee can determine the best slotting and what's realistic in terms of arranging witnesses. We have 13 or so with the additional witnesses. We could start planning, but have a subcommittee to properly plan out the previous studies that we want to complete and our calendar, but the clerk, if this passes, would have direction to start, and then it's not limited to, and then we can have a subcommittee next week.
Okay, so how about this? We vote on the motion as it currently stands, and I'll schedule a subcommittee meeting for the second hour next Thursday, and we'll move on from there. Okay? That's good? All right, so any further discussion?
We need to vote on the motion.
Okay, any further discussion on the motion as amended? No? Recorded vote? Can we have a recorded vote, please?
Ms. O'Connell?
Yes.
Ms. Damoff?
Yes.
Mr. Gay?
In favor?
Ms. Zaid?
Yes.
Mr. Fragiskatos?
Yes.
Ms. Dencho?
Yes.
Mr. Elvis?
Yes.
Mr. Shipley?
Yes.
Mr. Lloyd?
Yes.
Madame Michaud?
En faveur.
Mr. McGregor?
Yes.
Yes pour 10. Contre. Nobody.
That is carried. Motion to adjourn is moved. All in favor? Carried. I think that was unanimous, that one, too. Thank you all.